This week I'll be learning to live with this snaky critter, and Penn gets to drive the gorgeous Ultima Sport. I'm quite sure that you don't need me to tell you what the shape of the Gardner Douglas 427 harks back to. And we wanted to find out if the old hairy Chester is really just a testosterone machine for charging around town, posing and perhaps wrestling through the occasional gentle curve, or can it be used as a GT in the traditional sense, a proper Grand Tourer? So we've put it to the ultimate test. We've brought it to North Wales, where the roads are fantastic, but the weather is, well, terrible. To find out if you can live with this thing for a weekend away. Is it a viable alternative to the likes of TVR? You'll have noticed immediately, of course, the hardtop. It's a prototype that Gardner Douglas have been working on for the car, and it makes the whole thing an awful lot easier if you're nipping away for a weekend like I am. I can certainly vouch for its weatherproofness so far, because it got me here in this weather without getting wet. There is some noise, but they say that'll be engineered out in no time. But talking about noise, with a car like this, there's one noise that really matters, and it's this one. It's quite a nice noise, and it begs you to, well, give it a blast. I won't deny, I approached driving this car with, well, a bit of thrill and a bit of trepidation. I felt like a small boy hopping over a fence into a field to chase a bull with a stick with a pin in the end. Well, look at it on paper. It could be a real monster. We've got, what, 300 brake horsepower from a 5-litre V8 and a car weighing about 1,000 kilos. It could be a real frightener. So I was braced and ready to find something, the tail of which was far too keen to overtake the front. It's a pussycat, believe me. They claim at Gardner Douglas to have got the weight distributed roughly 50-50. They say that's because in a light chassis with a nice meaty jag diff at the back end, it kind of balances out the engine. I don't know, but it feels like it on the road. There's none of the tail sliding monstrosity unless you get a bit silly, and there's an awful lot of power under your right foot. This is a customer's car that we've very kindly been lent. So the setup is custom to what they want. Therefore, there's quite a long clutch travel on it, which is noticeable, but the payoff for that is it's not the meaty nightmare that you'd expect. You don't feel like you're lifting ton weights with your left foot. It's fairly cramped in the footwell, but that's purely because of the enormous transmission tunnel. The bell housing at the back of this engine must be monstrous. Have a big engine like this, you can't get around the fact that it is physically big, but that's one of the things that defines this car, one of its characteristics. It's a big V8. The interior has been beautifully trimmed, which gives it the feel of being every inch the hand-built sports car. Dials are well laid out in this lovely flat dashboard. It does feel very much the 60s period, and it's all very nicely fitted. Switches here for windscreen wipers, for the heater for the window. We've got fog lights, hazard lights, headlights. Here is the switch for the indicators, which is actually quite handy once you've got used to using it, and a dip switch for the main beam. It's all been quite cleverly done, but still remains feeling quite authentic in here. And of course the best control of all is turn the ignition on under here. You can probably hear the petrol pump ticking away at the back, and then that's my favourite one. The Coopre name is a legend in the motoring world, yet did you know that the replica snakes now far outnumber the originals? To be honest, there are so many now that the whole Coopre thing is in danger of getting, well, boring. The original Coopre was an unsophisticated brute with a ladder frame chassis which couldn't really cope with Ford V8 power, a monster in every sense, not easy to drive and frightful handling. For a start, Gardner Douglas dispenses with the traditional ladder frame in favour of a backbone chassis and semi-monocoque toe. To prove this design, the Gardner Douglas 427 went racing with Andy Burrows.
A definite sort of objective there was to sort of satisfy myself that the actual chassis and the suspension was up to the job of very high power, run over 500 horsepower in the race car, and obviously on sort of semi-slick tyres. So we put in a lot of stress through the car there, and we wanted to sort of give it a thorough shakedown. We've done sort of the 427 now in road going form, you know, as I say, for 9 years. So sort of prior to racing, 7 years of that has all been road going stuff. So to go to the next extent with the racing was really just to sort of test it to destruction, if you like. And having been satisfied with that, you know, we can now sort of, and having learned a lot more what's involved when you're setting the cars up for racing, I can now sort of confidently sort of use those ideas in practice on the new car, the GT.
In many ways, it's the engine that defines a car like this. It gives us its characteristic brute force and makes those gorgeous noises. Where the old Coopre, the original, went wrong was in having a chassis that simply couldn't handle all that power. The Gardner Douglas has a chassis that certainly can. So, as a sports car, success. But that's not the point of our test. We wanted to find out, does it work as a Grand Tourer? Well, the hard tops kept the rain off and the wind out. And the final part of the test is this. Can it cope with all your luggage from a weekend away? And I'd say the answer to that is self-evidently a resounding yes, absolutely, and with room to spare. So, Grand Tourer and a viable alternative for the likes of TVR? Yeah, it is.
Forms of motorsport imported from America never seem to do well here, drag racing being the notable exception. But there is one series that has done well, Legends. Take a look at this.
It originated from Charlotte in North Carolina in the USA and started nearly 7 years ago, where they started in fact with 6 cars, and today they're running 2,800 of them. The excitement was such that 5 years ago I latched onto it and introduced them to this country with my partner, and here we are today with just a few of our races.
But you came from the music industry. Why the switch over to motorsport?
I spent all my working youth and into slightly later years until I received a grey beard bit in the music business. The music business itself is in fact very similar to motor racing. I've been an avid fan of the different formula running, from Formula 1 through to you name it. When I saw this series in America, acquired what should I say, was able to pick up the rights for the European market. It was an automatic transfer of my interest, simply because it's the same type of thing, it's entertainment.
How much will it cost to compete in Legend Series?
Well, yes, this is as far as the rules are concerned, it's very much a low-cost form of motor racing. When you compare Legends cars with other formula, the fact you can buy a car for a little over £10,000 plus the VAT, of course, and you can then, with a little upgrade, you can go racing on all of the premier circuits in the UK for an estimated cost of around £7,500. That gives you 15 rounds of non-stop action racing where you have 3 races per meeting. Again, compare that with lots of other formula where very often they only have 1 opportunity to be on the track. We have 3.
Another appealing aspect of Legends is the way everyone mucks in to help one another. Mike Ives.
Yes. Everybody can go and basically borrow anything off any of the drivers. It's like one big happy family. I've never been involved with a formula in the past where down to me 11-year-old children, up to me, well, I don't know how old my pit crew is, but he's knocking on years. Everybody gets on all well together.
Obviously, that all stops on the track.
Yeah, when red mist comes down, when green flag goes, it's every man for himself, and we don't take any prisoners.
Have you ever been involved in a racing incident that was your fault?
I've had 1 or 2 incidents on the track that might have been my fault, allegedly.
So, Gary, you finished 5th in the championship last year. What is your aim for this year?
Well, that's right, I come 5th last year. Just before the Donington meeting, I had a brand new engine fitted, which together with me learning about the car and the new engine, put me right on pace with the top 3. And from Donington till the end of the year, I was actually 2nd highest point scorer. So really, we are aiming to be in the top 3 by the end of the year, which would be nice. Just really depends on how much luck we have beginning part of the season, really.
And I suppose you two just want to beat Gary.
Well, yeah, obviously, yeah. Be nice to be able to keep up with him, really. I think, obviously, start of the season it's going to be a bit tricky learning the car and getting used to the circuits and such like. Obviously, Gary's got a bit of an advantage there, already done a season. But I think we'll be in the middle somewhere. It'd be nice.
Yes, that's what we're hoping for, somewhere in the middle of the pack. I think there's 24 cars or so this year. They've got virtually a full grid of legends, so going to be hard work for anybody, I think. Should be good fun.
For 1999 we have as part of the Eurocar package, we ran 16 rounds, the length and the breadth of the country. We race at Brands Hatch, Mallory Park, where we are today. We go up as far as Knock Hill in Scotland, across to Wales, to Pembrey. We're going to Anglesey, Oulton Park, and down to Lyden. I mean, you name it, we crisscross the country.
Well, there you go. Our fact sheet has got more information on who to contact, but do try and get to a Legends meet because they're pretty spectacular.
Nicola Hill takes us back to last year's Donnington Kit Car Show.
This is Donington and it's the last of the big 3 kit car shows of the year, but there's something different about this show, and it's this. The mainstream manufacturers have claimed record sales in 1998. Has this good fortune filtered down to specialists like Westfield?
No, not really. The kit car industry doesn't have the large amount of budgets that the bigger manufacturers have. So therefore, when we do try and promote the car, we do it from smaller kit car shows, motor racing events and the smaller kit car magazines.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Westfield hopefully will be producing more vehicles and also a wider range of vehicles.
This is a Pilgrim Hawthorne which was produced in the early 80s. However, there weren't very many made as the company then began to produce Coopre replicas. Now, would you believe it, this Ferrari 250 GTO is actually a Datsun, and that's a Daytona copy. But Ferrari got stroppy and sued the two companies and no more kits were produced. Now, some kit car companies try and go mainstream. This is the Ginetta G32, which was sold fully built. But things didn't work out and the company had to go back to making kit cars. Well, that's it for Donington 98. Check out the Kit Car Press for a show near you.
When I was a teenager, I fell in love. Not with a lot of women in particular, but with cars and motor car racing in specific. And not Formula One like you might think. I fell in love with GT racing, and in particular, the Le Mans 24-hour race, or the Great Race as it's known. I loved the cars of that period. The 60s for me, incredible. The C-types that won Le Mans evolved later into the E-type Jags of the time. Ferraris did the same. They were really tricky cars, but they really were the supercars of the day. Real Le Mans cars are of course out of reach of most except for the disgustingly rich, and even then they're so highly strung as to be undrivable on today's roads. However, circa 1985 a bloke called Lee Noble created a kit form Le Mans type car called the Ultima, with a true mid-engine layout, all based on easily obtainable Ford and Renault parts. Space frame chassis and aerodynamic body, it won practically everything it entered and evolved a couple of times in the process. Prior to designing the Ascari supercar, Lee started to build a third version of the Ultima with a better chassis and a completely new body style. He never finished the job, and one of his racing customers, who had already bought his own Ultima and modified it, bought the whole shooting match. Ted Marlowe took the basic car and totally re-engineered it. Out went the basic Renault engines and transmissions, and in came a totally revised space frame chassis, Chevy V8 power, driving through a Porsche 911 transaxle. 1,001 refinements later, and you have the Ultima Sports of today. A true supercar, a Le Mans car, but for the road. Getting into an Ultima is no easy matter, but once you're in, it all holds you perfectly. And the first thing you notice, of course, is how simple it all is. Rev counter, speedo, bang in front of you, prominent position. Ancillary gauges, warning lights, etc. Switch gear just below it, but still perfectly visible. Obviously you're in a race car here, up to a point. Right-hand gear change. You might not think, oh, you know, I'll be in desperate trouble with one of those, but you won't be. Few miles with this, and it's easy, easy. Racing seats hold you like a glove. Racing seat belts, 6-point Willans harness, no problems at all. Well, I suppose when you've got yourself something that looks like a Le Mans car, the one thing you want it to do is drive like one. So here we are. My God! Incredible! Tremendous power, tremendous urge. 350 brake horse under your feet. Whoa, tram lines a bit. But it feels all of a piece, you know? It's like, just, you're kind of all at one with it. Hardly the epitome of style and grace getting in and out of these, but that's the price you pay. Look no further than this. Carbon fibre pylon mounted rear wing. It says so long sucker as you blur into the distance. In there, the business. 5.7 litres Chevy V8. 350 brake horsepower, Porsche 911 5-speed transaxle. Fantastic. Mid-mounted, proper place for an engine. Luggage space, you say? Phew, there's a bit in the side. Not a lot, but enough for a weekend. 25 grand gets you this motor car in kit form. 40 grand from the factory built. Any colour you like. Do I like it? No. I love it.
Last week we saw the early stages of Ian Pettinger's car project. Steve Greenwood has been working with a small team to get the first prototype car ready for testing. Unlike most kit manufacturers, the team are able to satisfy themselves about the car's dynamics with prototypes before the public get to see the new model. In this respect, the Sector 3 team are following the same stages as major manufacturers.
The first time we took the car out, we found that the dampers, because of the different lever ratios front to rear, we found that the dampers needed setting from the notional start point. We found that the rear springs have settled a little, so we'll have to jack those up. The front wheels, I think we'll give it a bit more towing to give it a bit more directional stability, and I think we'll adjust the tyre pressures. At the front, we'll put another couple of pounds in.
Ian Hine, editor of one of the kit car magazines, has made an early visit to check out the Savile 175. Early press coverage is important to a fledgling manufacturer, so what does Ian think at this early stage?
So, what do you think for first impressions? It's amazing what you can do with an old Sierra. That really does feel good. It's very bumpy out here. It's quite hard to get I mean, it rides well, but it's, you know, a smoother road would give you a lot more feel for the corners. But I mean, it's certainly nice round. Gear change is nice, pedals nice, driving position is really good, but the car feels totally solid. It really does. And, that is a big difference over.
I think that's a function of its torsional rigidity.
Yeah.
If the chassis is right, then the suspension can do its job.
That's right. But the mirrors are
find a wee bit awkward to see through, but I think you're going to change these anyway, aren't you?
I think we're going to change to a different arm on it. That arm isn't really suitable for the angles
it's a
that we need
prototype car,
to view.
But as an indication of what the production version is going to be like, it's really impressive.
One of the important aspects of a new design is to create a distinctive look, particularly difficult in a car of this type.
It's very easy to sit down and design what you want to design, but it's not as easy as that. You get a specific brief from your client, and what they require isn't always legal. I think this shows up more in the rear of the vehicle, where the legalities now are such that you have to have reflectors in a certain place, you have to have indicators in a certain place, you have to have stop and tail lights. In Britain, high-level brake lights aren't legal at the present time. They are in America and certain parts of the continent, but it may only be a matter of time before we have to have high-level brake lights in the backs of vehicles. Most cars you follow, modern new cars, will have a high-level brake light, so it's as well to design that in at this stage so that later on, if that legislation comes in, it doesn't particularly look like an afterthought.
Marketing still remains a major challenge for the team. They're happy that their product is right, but now they need to bring it to the public's attention. The solution proves innovative. Tune in next week when we'll bring you up to date and get the first TV test drive of the prototype.
If you've seen anything of interest to you in this programme, then our fact sheet will tell you exactly who and where to contact. All you need to do is send a self-addressed envelope with 2 first-class stamps on it, not forgetting the programme number 2, Kits and Cruisin Fact Sheet, Menor Motors, Granada Television, Key Street, Manchester, M60, 9EA.
Some fascinating news from Westfield Sports Cars. They've just managed to register their SE shape as a copyright. That means that anybody copying the shape of a Westfield is now in legal contravention and can be sued. Beware.
Next week we go back to North Wales to try something with a little Latin flair.